struggle is real. Ta-da! Been cases where that has just fused. 58 foot-pounds. You pull the clutch in, that paddle actuates, pushes this up. We're gonna clean up both ends. This is what you're targeting. Properly adjusted clutch, you're gonna be right there. Now I will say this, I did just break one off. All right guys, there's a lot laid out here for the blaster. And since the last video, we got 21 inches of snow in the following days, and that was a lot. Biggest storm we've had in a couple of years anyway. And it's all gone now. This is literally 1 week later. And we're about to get slammed again. 10 to 14 inches of snow starting tomorrow morning through the rest of this week. So I have an evening now after work. Little bit of a window to do a little bit where the mud doesn't get me here. So where do we want to start? Let's catch up on the XFR. Did get these new pegs in, and where the last video left off, I was waiting on a Gen 2 peg to adapt to get the other side of these XFR Nerf bars on. This is the Gen 1 peg that I was preparing to modify. You see, I'd already cut off the Gen 1 peg mount here. And if I do a quick little comparison, there's your differences. The Gen 1 would have this peg on here for the cable pull brake system to go on. So I have a Gen 1 peg for an aftermarket brake setup. And big difference here, peg movement from closer front here to the back, and some different cutouts that I'm sure I'll discover along the way where these things sit in here. So I think I'm actually going to start here, look to get this peg on the frame so I can mock in the Nerf, so everything, see how everything's going to sit. And then I can clear my bench a little bit because we're coming around, because it is now time to get the clutch assembled. I have a bunch of things here from HPM, so nuts and bolts, etc. We have our top end from Swope Racing to put on. Lots to talk about here as we compare the, we have a rechambered head, we have a ported and polished cylinder here for trail riding that's going to go on the +3 Vitos stroker crank down in here. And we'll make some comparisons to the stock OEM head that came off that had a piston blow up in it. And this is a knockoff cylinder, so we're going to make some comparisons there. And I want to get all this cleaned up so I can focus on this top end build, because we've got to talk about spacer plates and gaskets. I mean, really, we have all kinds of stuff to work through here. Yeah, we got a whole lot to do, and it's not going to happen if I don't start. So starting with the Nerfs, clear that off the bench, move into the clutch side and top end here. Now, something I also wanted to say, thank you for, boy, the channel has been getting really busy in the last month. We've been such a nano-sized channel for years. I mean, sub 3,000 subscribers, and in the last 2 weeks with the blaster content, we've jumped almost 400 subscribers. So that is really something as we come into the springtime riding season. Everybody gets everything out. Snow goes, trails get ready to open, so that's awesome. Thank you for everybody coming back and for everybody new. Certainly appreciate it. Let's see if we can get these Nerfs bolted on here. And if I bring this up, I can do it without straining my back, kneeling down on the ground, which is nice. Now what I did is I reached out to XFR for this kit, and this is the PS-205 kit. Came with the hardware, both sides, and this will adapt the Gen 1 mount again for a Gen 2 style of brake caliper. In this case, this is the full CTI kit. So let's go ahead and put some of this together here before we bolt on, because I will no longer need the CTI plate, which was a need for the OEM pegs that sit on here to be able to adapt. So I won't need this for now. We'll save that for later. I've got my big washer that's going to sit on here, my big E-clip. Something else I should mention, the CTI kit comes with these longer, pull this out, these longer base studs here. So these are a touch longer than the OEM. I believe I can still use them, have plenty of bite in here, so I'm going to. And this is going to have to get some more torque put down on it. Now, when I set the Nerf on, there's a bolt that'll go through the back of the Nerf and hold the CTI bracket here, so none of this tries to slide around when I actually work the pedal. So let's set that on. Keep mocking things in here. So just kind of finger tighten there, because what I want to see is going to be the up front setup. Now, one thing I'm noticing out of the gate is that I'm too stiff here, and that is keeping my pedal from coming back, and it seems to be rubbing on the frame. Right there. Right there. So we got to think about that, because that needs a little bit more clearance. Yeah, got to think about that. I wonder if I can bring this pedal a little closer to me, but that's the XFR. Oh, I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look at the pedal. That might be taking a little off the CTI side, or I don't really want to shim out from the frame here, and I don't really want to dig up, you know, all of the powder coat for the original Gen 1 part of the blaster piece. And I know a lot of guys cut this off initially, but I've got to do something there for this to work. The other thing we're trying to look at here is the front. We want this front end to come together close enough so that we can drill a hole and have it go through the HPM brace down here. Same thing on the other side. So this has got to come together. Probably have to do some ratchet strap to pull things so that these U-bolts can sit down in. But I'm not mocked in, ready to drill that hole yet. I've got to deal with this. Yep, and that's exactly what it is. The pedal is rubbing on the OEM structure for the cable pull brakes. That in hindsight, knowing what I was going to do, I should have removed all of that before going to powder coat. I don't want to ding up the powder coat now, so I've got to come up with an alternative solution, being where we are. So having loosened these up, voila, and I just put a placeholder in there so I can get the action. There's what it is, and honestly, I'm already rubbing off the paint. That might actually be paint off the pedal. But let me take all this apart so I can look a little closer, because I might go after that. Oh, the struggle is real. I've decided not to grind the frame down, chip up the paint. I've decided not to grind the CTI bracket down. I've decided to find just a small washer. We're talking a millimeter here. But I don't have any matching washers. I have a little bit of everything, but I'm not going to use galvanized, and these guys will flop around. And this stainless steel is perfect, but I don't have a second one, and this is what I want. This is what I want. One more matching, and I swear that I probably have a bag of these somewhere. All right, here's what we're going with. This is a bag of leftover hardware. Came off the blaster during teardown. A-arm mounts, castle nuts, etc. Some washers not really cleaned up. I have two matching ones here, millimeter. I am going to dip these in the Caswell so that they don't rust up, and then that's what we're going to do. Let's see. Let's mock it in, make sure everything works before I go through the effort of putting them in the Caswell. All right, I think that's going to be perfect. So I dipped it in the Caswell. Been using this so that nuts and bolts don't rust up, because I haven't had them sent out. The hardware on here hasn't been anodized or anything like that, so that is the treatment so that things don't rust. And if you've been following the channel, you have seen that I didn't do all the bolts on here, and lo and behold, over the winter, Many did rust, so I had to go back, do it again. And at this point, it's been a month and a half since treatment on a lot of these ones where I had trouble. And they are all continuing to maintain that kind of fun, worn, but OEM look. So happy with it. Previous video you saw that these were pretty rusted up. So here we go. We have that 1 millimeter in there, and that's all we needed. I either needed to grind this guy down, take it off before powder, take a millimeter off the CTI bracket, or do a spacer. I did a spacer. There we go. So now with that, let's get our Nerfs back on, mock in, so we can get a pen, a pencil, clamp this together, mark our spot for the U-bolt holes. All right. My left-hand side in here, we're going to be okay. I'm going to get a mark on here. Of course, we can't fit through. Isn't that always the case? Happy with that mark still. My right side, this side, I'm still off. Question's going to be, what do I do about it? Ugh. Close. Now also recognize whether or not I had welded in the HPM frame brackets down here, gusset kit, I still had this problem coming at me because I was still going to have to get these Nerfs to align to get the U-bolts over. So I just have to drill, but I was still, this challenge was still coming at me. So here's what we're going to do. See my mark there? That one's pretty good. This one is going to be a little more challenging. You can't see my mark. I can't see my mark. There it is. There's my mark. So the U-bolt is going to end up coming up at a bit of an angle, and I'm going to have to finagle things in and then clamp, and things are going to adjust. Followed by, we'll have a little bit of fight on the back of the Nerfs, getting each of these to align back into the frame. The threads are good there, and if we need to, we can through bolt, but I'm not going to think about that right now. So I'm going to take these off. We're going to set in here with a drill bit. Boy, that's going to be kind of fun coming down. But once we do that, we'll get these mounted. Tell you what, I do want to be very careful that I don't weaken the frame by going through the tubing in this, so we're going easy here. All right, you saw at the end there, I started partnering up with my air grinder for final punch through, and I had more dexterity control with the air grinder to make sure I didn't nick the frame, and we were successful. We didn't nick the frame, so we didn't compromise any of that. We've got 2 holes there. Let's see if the XFRs can bolt up now. All right, Nerfs are on. 13 mil head bolts in the back, and tightened down to a grunt. I did not put a torque spec on here. I do not have Loctite on here, just for awareness. And these ones you saw me going down with the handheld impact, just slowly bringing them in nice and straight. And as I did that, it pulled the bars together here. So we have nice straight U-clamps. Looking good down underneath there. And we have that clearance. There we go. So that also makes it, we have a spring built in here rather than trying to do a spring catch from there to there, which if I had not gone this option, which is an add-on option from CTI, this would have gotten in the way as I look at it. I would have had to cut all this out. So something to think about if you're going to do the full kit. you're planning on powder coating, if you're going to do a hydraulic conversion, get rid of this guy. This guy was unnecessarily in the way, the original hardware for your cable pull brake. Okay, now with the Nerfs, the only remaining thing that I should mention here is on these Nerfs. Oh boy, I thought there is on the other side a pilot hole. This one does not have the pilot hole, but the idea is that you would drill through here, and this pilot hole through here all the way through. Set your bit all the way through. It'll pop out the bottom. If I roll this out of the way, move. There we go. Oh, one of these guys. These long ones here, once you drill your hole all the way through, that is one more anchor point for your Nerfs, so they can't slide laterally. I mean, you're in a pretty good place here with this. This is really your strength for lateral. I had not done that in the past when I had this blaster running in its milk crate put back together, knockoff cylinder form, but that's something you should be aware of. You're doing this right. That should get drilled out. All right, that just cleared some bench space. Thank you again, XFR. Now we can come back around to the motor. All right, guys, here we go, coming back around to the motor. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the clutch side put together here, pick up where we left off on the previous video. To do that, both of these need to be dealt with. We have the primary drive gear nut here. This is going to have to be torqued down to 58 foot-pounds. Over here we have the counterbalancer, nut and locking washer. This is going to be 40 foot-pounds once we get there. Now, the reason we got hung up is because I was silly when I was trying to read my parts bags there. I needed a replacement one of these guys. There was no way we were going to reuse this. This lock washer is very similar to the one that goes in the clutch basket. See the single tab here, and just if you look close, it's just a touch different. Well, the part numbers are very similar, and this is where I goofed up. I quickly glanced and saw the 90215 and thought I had two of the same. I didn't here. The one for the clutch basket here is the second part of the number, the 12271. That's this guy. The 12272, that is going to be the one I thought I was missing. Let me get those out. That's how similar they look there, and they're not interchangeable. Clutch basket, counterbalancer. So here we go, into the clutch basket. Now we can get this guy locked down, torqued to spec, and we can set on the Wiseco billet basket and move forward. All right, let's start with 40. Start at 30, work my way up. All right, there's the idea there. A little bit of quick ingenuity in motion. Just a block of wood, about a 1/2 inch cut there, so that I can slip it over the crank here. And the wood's nice because it's going to be soft. Not doing this with metal, going to ding anything up here. I know guys that can do this with tuning forks. If you have a tuning fork, I don't have a tuning fork. But now, in theory, let's see, righty-tighty, it's going to pull that way. Now I can get on. See, with that, feed it in there. There we go. Now I can get on and tighten this nut down here. So just had to make a quick tool because I didn't want to try and hold the gears. I know some guys will wedge a penny down in there because the copper's soft. I just haven't done that. This will work just fine. Again, heading for 30. There's 30. Take ourselves now up to 40. There's 40. Now we got to do the other one going to 58. So we're going to start that one at 40. Here we go. There's 40. 58. Ta-da. All right, now that we have our torque specs, we need to get these two guys, well, we need to get this lock washer pinched, at least one side of it. Okay, happy with that. Now before we set our basket down on, we have a conical spring washer and a thick washer here. And the conical spring washer, first one to go all the way down in there. And if anybody's interested, in this case, the center of it is the part that is heading up versus the outside. That's just how I've done it in this case. Nothing I've seen in the manuals tells me which way one or the other and goes on here. Now I will step to the side for a second and tell you how I knew the order of operations here, because it's not in my shop manual. So to figure out the order of operations here, in this case I went to Rocky Mountain ATV, and you can navigate on the left hand side down to OEM parts. You pick your make, model, etc. In this case, this is a Gen 1 blaster, so I did 2002. And there, once I get there, I can look at the schematic, in this case the clutch schematic, and as I blow that up, I can see parts 13 and 14 are these two washers. I can see the order of operations that number 13 in this case, the conical washer, goes first, followed by the bigger washer. So when I don't know the order of operations for something in here, I'll go there, pull up that schematic, because the manual doesn't have anywhere near that level of detail. Okay, so now we put our basket in, and we built this up with the gear from the donor basket in the last video. All right, now that that's there, I can put in my locking washer, inner clutch boss, and we've already been through talking about this and inspecting, making sure these grooves here, and these may show up on camera, but they're smooth under my fingers, so I'm not worried about those. You remember, if you've been following the channel, the previous clutch basket, the outer lobes, these guys here, deeply grooved, and smooth them out with a file, but recognizing this motor is getting built up, there's more horsepower in here, more torque. I didn't want to use that. The other thing I wanted to do was lighten those clutch basket lobes by drilling, but that was going to weaken them. So we went ahead and we invested in this basket. Now, here we go. This is the other washer, lock washer for the clutch basket. There's a little detent here, sits right down in. Now we have the clutch nut, and let's look up our torque spec on this guy. Clutch nut, there we go, also 58 foot-pounds. Alright, this is again where this tool comes in handy, because we need to hold on to this inner basket, which is just going to spin. Now I don't want to clamp down, I don't want to crush this basket, so this is just to hold it, so I'm getting pretty loose on the tension there. Now to be able to get at this nut, I'm setting this down so that my tusk tool here will push against the bench so that I can come up on this hold everything steady and work to get that torque on here. We'll say this, that's a little tough to get the full 58 foot-pounds on there without this being in the, on the ATV, just to keep this motor from moving around. But we do also have the extra safety of the lock washer in here, and we have a brand new one. Get on that, grab one side, okay. Basket in place. Now, you recall from the previous video, we had gone through the exercise of measuring each of these clutch fibers, because this is actually a used pack that is going in here. Originally, I believe these are Tusk. They've got a little bit of glaze on there, but the thickness is fine, and these, again, they've been in oil, so I'm not re-oiling them. Honestly, when I do put them in oil, they're only sitting in oil for as long as it takes me to build the motor, maybe an hour. I don't tend to do any more than that. The other thing I'll mention again from the previous video is we have taken out the smaller clutch ring with the spring, and we're replacing that with a full-size ring. Now we have the metal pads here, and each one has this lobe, and we're going to spread these lobes equidistant as possible around here. So I'm going to start at my 12 o'clock, do another clutch plate. And I'm going to call this about 2 o'clock. Clutch plate. About 5 o'clock. Friction plate. Yeah, 7. There we go. And keep building up the pack here. I guess that's about 10 o'clock. Next one. And I've already done 12 o'clock. Maybe this one's going to be 3. What I've found, because they're just between all the various positions you could drop it in, I can't be perfectly equidistant. So for better or for worse, that's how I've done it. Now my pack is built up level with the case. Now this fella. And as we look here, there's a pretty good detent for the ball bearing that sits down in the middle here between the actuator for the clutch and in here. And this is important. You don't want to forget that ball bearing. Now what a lot of guys do, and I think we're going to do it as well, is we're going to file this off so it's nice and flat starting without that big dimple there. Once we do that, we'll be able to adjust, take out that slack for proper clutch actuation by turning with the small Phillips that's in here and this nut, and we can extend the shaft just a little bit so we get good actuation. So let me grab a file, and I'm just going to smooth that little dimple off there. So we're starting as though this is OEM. We're going to start with a flat surface. Here's what we're doing. I'm just literally spearing just like that to protect, because I'm about to make some small metal shavings, and before I give anybody a heart attack, we don't want metal shavings in the motor. That's all that's for there. If you're looking just the slightest touch, a little dimple there. I mean, that was probably 25 light passes with that hand file there. I didn't want to do this on a grinder, didn't want to go too fast. But ideally, you'll do this on both ends so you get that nice, smooth OEM start again. Now here's the other side. So let's talking about this, right? Actuator arm going to head into the motor, and as you pull the cable and this rotates, you have this paddle, and this paddle pushes up on this rod. This is the ball bearing in question, sits in there. Make sure that ball bearing doesn't roll away. That ball bearing sits between these two. You pull the clutch in, that paddle actuates, pushes this up, separates the clutch fibers, effectively putting you in neutral. And while that's all happening, this is spinning, hence that ball bearing in there. This is why if you're just kind of hanging out and all that, set yourself down in neutral. Don't just hold the clutch. The whole time you're holding that clutch, that ball bearing is spinning. There can be heat there, and there's been cases where that has just fused into one. So we have cleaned up this end, and if you look at the other end on this guy, you'll see there's a dimple there. Same thing, this one here was spun around because you would only have a dimple on one end, but at some point in the life of this motor, this was put in reverse. We're going to clean up both ends, and again, the slack we're making, ultimately at the end of the day, we will adjust that slack out by adjusting this nut here. And before I go on with that, let me show you what that adjustment actually is going to look like. So at the end of the day, when this actuator arm is set down in here, and I still need to do a couple of things in here. I'd have a seal to go in here. But let me get overhead with the camera. Once everything's in and once this is on the bike, we're going to come back around the set. So picture your clutch cable is here. And depending, see these two arrows? That's where your adjustment is supposed to be. So if you're here or if you're here, to fix that adjustment, that is going to be that Phillips head right there. That's how you're going to adjust it. So once this is all on the bike and you have this side cover off here, this is what you're targeting. Properly adjusted clutch, you're going to be right there. So pay attention to that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this is out of adjustment, and or the lobes are so warm that people are clutching in and the clutch isn't adjusted right, so they're stomping down their shifter, they're bending shift shafts, and they're just ultimately doing damage to the motor when really pay attention to this adjustment. And if your clutch is worn when you're in there servicing it, pay attention to those lobes. Give them a file if you need to. Then you're back to silky smooth shifting rather than bending shift shafts and damaging things and just, All right, I haven't filed this one down. I am going to drop a little bit of oil down in here. And this is just clutch oil. And things might smoke a little bit when we kick off, but that's fine. So I'm using this in place of assembly lube is really the answer to that question there. Same thing, the ball bearing dropped down in. And I do have a pine needle on this guy. Let's get, I don't want a pine needle in my clutch. Now, on here, if you're looking, there is a dot on this clutch cover, and there's a dot on the outside of this boss here. Those need to line up. If you don't line them up, this will not sit tight down in here, even when you put your springs in, and you are forever in neutral. There's no tension on the plates. So, line up dot, dot, sitting down flush. Okay, springs. Now, something that I may need to pay attention to down the road is these are OEM springs. And again, having everything built up, I may experience some clutch slipping in here because of the higher horsepower motor. I have a better clutch basket. I might find that I may need to put a different set of heavier duty springs in here. But today, we're going to use them and we're going to find out. I'm not looking at these in any particular, one way versus the other way. I'm just setting them down in there. Set these guys in and we will get these started in a star pattern, and then we will get our torque spec and get them where they need to be. Clutch spring bolts, 52 inch-pounds. That's 4.3 foot-pounds. Essentially, you take the 52 inch-pounds, you divide by 12, and you get that number. So let's get our torque wrench and get ourselves set down to there it is, 4. And I'm going with 4 because I don't have a digital torque wrench, so I can't be too precise here. 4 is where we're going to be. Now, I will say this, I did just break one off, and this was starting to feel really weird on me as I kept putting things down because it's aluminum, it's soft, and I'll use my hand to kind of get a gauge for, the feel of things here, and I didn't even make it to 3 foot-pounds before that one popped off and went flying. Now, I had a feeling, so I grabbed some eye protection because I was like, I just don't know about this. So I backed myself down from 4 foot-pounds to 3 foot-pounds, double-checked my tooling. I'm actually at, I'm going to call it 2.8 pounds. And that's not, it's below the 10. We're right here. We are correct. And I still popped one. So I'm going to go back and get another basket. It is a inner clutch boss. It is fairly worn. Doesn't mean I have to go back a step. I'm going to have to take this lobe back off, back this nut back off, take my clutch fibers back off, put a new basket in. So pause there for a bit. Going to go source that. We were moving so well here too. Yeah, I don't see the mistake I made there. Double checking myself again. Clutch spring bolts, 52 inch-pounds, 52 divided by 12, 4.3 foot-pounds. I was set at just below 3 foot-pounds, still popped that one. So these may just be weak, and I'm going to need another one. So I've got to hunt a few things, continue on. Let me hit pause for a moment. All right, having taken a pause, it's a few days later here, kind of mulling this over. Here's my thought. Now clear we got to take this apart because what I'm going to try and do is drill this for very small, easy out, so to say. As I look down in here, and again, tough to see on camera, the threads all look good. And if the threads are good coming out on here, this is an OEM basket and I'd love to preserve it. And I've got a small bit over here on an old Craftsman set. And I'm hoping that one of these, this little one right here, hopefully it won't take too much. Hopefully that little tiny guy is going to be just right. You know, I might be able even to go in there with a size bigger. And if I can and everything looks good, again, this is an OEM Interboss. Love to save it. And then I just have to hunt, hunt another bolt there. So let me set up to do that. Let's see if we can be successful. It actually, the broken off piece was spinning even as I was trying to drill. This won't take much to get out if I can get a grip on it. It's loose in there. I might have enough bite even without drilling it with an easy out. I was just able to see with the drill bit trying to drill, it was spinning in there. So I'm going to try and just hand easy out, spin it out. Tough to see, but I'm spinning it. That's a lucky break right there, guys. When I came out today, I did not think, I figured I had a 50-50 shot at trying to get this nut extracted. So this is a win. Look at that. Those threads look good to me. They look fine. So that really was a lucky break, kind of no pun intended. But yeah, you got just the top of that snapped off. So I have two pieces, but there were more than this. You had a washer, and it sat down on here as well that also popped. So I have all of the, it's just been a wild, muddy, messy spring. So until the next one, thanks again for all the new subscribers coming on, really fantastic. I'm going to park it, get cleaned up, get set up to start working the next video, where ultimately my hope is we get this motor fully together and back on the quad.